My name is Daryl Osby, and I'm the fire chief of the Los Angeles County Fire Department. And as I stand here, I stand here with a heavy heart. And today is truly a sad day and a tragic day for the Los Angeles County Fire Department. And I stand here from the perspective that you see other people do, but I just never thought it would be me nor our fire department family that would suffer this type of loss. As a fire chief, and I always talk to the members of my organization, and I always tell them that their safety is my #1 priority, that I expect them to come to work on time, put in a good day's work, and go home safely. And I recognize, and we all recognize, that the work that our firefighters and firefighter paramedics do is a very dangerous and arduous profession, and in many times they put their lives in danger to protect and serve others when they receive 911 calls for service. But yet, as a fire chief, I never thought that when our firefighters face danger, that they would face that danger at one of our community fire stations. At approximately 10:55 this morning, we had a tragic shooting at a fire station 81 in Agua Dulce, which is one of our Los Angeles County fire stations. And it's with a heavy heart that I stand here and say that one of our firefighter specialists succumbed from his injuries. He was a brave, committed, loyal member of our department for over 20 years. And he was a 44-year-old male who died of his injuries. I had the opportunity to recently talk to his family and other members of our department as it pertains to our fallen member during this difficult time. And you can only imagine how they feel for the loss of their coworker and a loss of a husband, a son, a father, and dear friend. Additionally, at Fire Station 81, a fire captain who's 54-year-old male sustained a gunshot, and he was transported to Henry Mayo Hospital, where he remains in critical but stable condition. Tragically, we learned that the shooter was an off-duty firefighter who came to the fire station. Following the shooting, we learned that the firefighter returned to his house. He barricaded himself. The home was set on fire, and he was also found deceased. And that's under investigation by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. To ensure the proper care and support of our family members, friends, and team members, I've activated our chaplain program, our peer support team, and our mental health behavioral specialists that are speaking to the families, our co-workers, and our friends during this challenging time. I cannot stand here to express my feelings and the deepest sympathies and prayers to the family and friends and colleagues of our fallen firefighter and our injured firefighter. This morning, when I received the news, it was some of the worst news that I've heard in my career. And as a fire chief, I've dealt with a lot of death and a lot of fallen members of my department. And I've always prayed that we would never have a line of duty death, and never thought that if it occurred, that it would occur in this fashion. I know that as firefighters, we are in a profession of providing assistance to others, but I ask that in this particular situation, that we ask you for your support, that we ask you for your assistance, that we ask you for your prayers in our time of need. This is an ongoing investigation, so I'm limited in the information that I could release. I will have the sheriff and his team come speak afterwards. But on behalf of the entire Los Angeles County Fire Department, I want to thank everybody for their thoughts, their prayers, and their support during this difficult time. While this is under investigation still, I would like to bring to the podium Sheriff Alex Villanueva.
Chief Osby, our condolences go out to your entire family and to the LA County Fire Department and to everyone impacted by this tragedy, obviously including the members of the families involved. Our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone. This morning at 10:53 a.m., our department received a 911 call at 8700 Sierra Highway in unincorporated Agua Dulce, and this is the location of LA County Fire Station 81. Santa Clarita Station deputies, Lancaster and Palmdale Station deputies arrived at the location at 11:18 a.m. You have to appreciate there's quite a bit of distance between all these places, and discovered there had been a shooting at the station itself, 81. Our Sheriff's Enforcement Bureau, Special Enforcement Bureau, the SWAT team, they responded immediately, followed by LASD Homicide Bureau and Arson as well. So this is an ongoing investigation. Right now I want to bring to the podium the man in charge of the investigation, Lieutenant Brandon Dean from our Sheriff's Homicide Bureau.
Thank you, Sheriff. So as the Sheriff indicated, this is obviously very early on in the investigation, so this is the preliminary information that we have as of so far. So as the Sheriff and the Chief indicated, approximately 10:50 this morning, our Palmdale Sheriff Station received a call of a gunshot victim in the 8700 block of Sierra Highway at LA County Fire Station number 81. Deputies from Palmdale Sheriff Station as well as Santa Clarita immediately responded. Upon their arrival, they discovered one victim, male white, 44 years of age, a firefighter engineer suffering from multiple gunshot wounds to the upper torso. He was unfortunately pronounced deceased at the scene. The second individual, a 54-year-old firefighter, captain for the LA County Fire Department, was also suffering from gunshot wounds. He was immediately transported to Henry Mayo, where he was treated and went into surgery, and as far as I hear, is listed in critical but stable condition. Based on witness statements at the scene that were at the fire station when the shooting happened, they gave a name of the suspect and a description of the suspect vehicle. That vehicle was linked to a residence in the 2600 block of Bent Spur Drive, and we know that that suspect that shot those two firemen is also a off-duty fireman that also works at LA County Station number 81, the same location. Deputies immediately started responding to the suspect's residence, at which time they also received a house fire call, and the house in question on the 2600 block of Bent Spur Drive was on fire. As the Sheriff indicated, members of our Special Enforcement Bureau immediately started to respond, and they contained the location. While containing the location, they saw an individual in a small pool outside of the actual residence, appeared to be suffering a gunshot wound to the head. At this time, it's unknown if it's self-inflicted or not, but we know that no deputies fired, and we don't believe anybody else was at the location, so it appears to be self-inflicted. We cannot with 100% certainty say that that is our suspect because we have not made an approach on the residence yet. The house is still burning. Once they feel it is safe to make an approach, our Special Enforcement Bureau officers will make an approach and clear the location. They didn't immediately make an approach because we had gathered information that they believed there was nobody else inside the location and that the one person that we were looking for was outside the location. Again, this is very early on. The actual motive of the crime, we're unsure yet. We still have to conduct interviews with all the fire station personnel that worked at the station all 3 shifts, family members, conduct next of kin notifications, process both crime scenes, first the firehouse, and then ultimately the house that is on fire once it's deemed to be safe to process.
Now I'm going to ask Dr. Contreras with Henry Mayo to come up and talk about the situation with the individual in the hospital right now.
Good afternoon. It's always a heavy heart and deep sadness for any trauma surgeon and for any medical facility on a day like this. And my condolences go to the families involved in this tragedy. And the LA County firefighters are brothers in the protection of the community as trauma surgeons. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge the family. Second, I'd like to discuss the shooting. As far as the hospital was mobilized at approximately 11 o'clock and 11:30, in which an active shooting event was occurring. We were mobilized and prepared, and I would like to acknowledge the hospital for being prepared handily for that event. We received 1 firefighter in this tragedy, a gunshot wound victim, which we took to the operating room and stabilized him. He's in critical condition. All life-threatening injuries have been addressed, and the recovery process is ongoing at this time.
Now we are going to take questions, and I don't know who wants to handle that from the PIO. Go ahead. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah. Wait, before.
Oh, you want to do Spanish first? Okay, we're going to do Spanish translation, and then we'll have questions. So hold that question. You'll go first. All right.
A eso de las 10:53 de esta mañana, nuestro departamento recibió una llamada por la 911 a la avenida del 8700 del freeway, del Sierra Highway, en un área desincorporada, se llama Agua Dulce. Aquí es el lugar donde está el cuartel de bomberos, estación número 81. Y la llamada de emergencia que había un tiroteo en ese lugar. Y nuestros alguaciles de la estación de Santa Cruz, Lancaster y Palmdale arrendaron al lugar a las 11:18 de la mañana. Tienen que darse cuenta de que la distancia entre todos estos lugares es muy lejos y toma tiempo en llegar. Y nuestra unidad de fuerza de choque, ellos descendieron también por helicóptero y fueron al lugar donde estaba una casa quemándose a la misma vez. Y entonces el tiroteo involucró personal de esa estación de bomberos y desafortunadamente un bombero de edad de 44 años de edad murió y fue declarado muerto en ese mismo lugar, en la estación de los bomberos. Un capitán de los bomberos fue transportado al hospital de Henry Mayo en estado crítico. Sus heridas fueron, bajo cirugía, fueron estabilizadas y en este momento se encuentra todavía en estado crítico, pero estable. Y ya no está sufriendo algo de vida o muerte con las heridas que sufrió en la balacera. Nuestro teniente de homicidio, Brandon Dean, dio los detalles de la investigación que está en sus etapas preliminares. Y se entiende de que todo esto ocurrió dentro de algo entre los bomberos mismos en esa estación 81. Y había una descripción de un sospechoso y un vehículo también fue descrito. Y al lugar donde estaba la casa quemándose encontraron lo que parece ser una persona ya fallecido en el lugar con una herida de bala, parece, en la cabeza. Pero como está todavía la casa quemándose, no han podido dar cercano a la persona fallecida para establecer si esa persona, y no han hecho identificación 100% positivo, pero se opina que es la misma persona que es responsable por el tiroteo en el cuartel de los bomberos. Y pues nuestras condolencias a toda la familia de los bomberos, la familia de los fallecidos y heridos, y a todo el departamento de bomberos del condado de Los Ángeles. Pero voy a cambiar ahora. We'll take questions in both English and Spanish. And, sir? Eso es algo que estamos investigando. Todavía no hemos hecho, tenemos que hacer entrevista con todos los empleados de ese cuartel, con todos los familiares, y entonces podemos determinar eso mismo.
Go ahead. Wait a minute, she's gonna...
That's always, workplace violence is some dispute is always a possibility, but until we have interviewed every single one of the potential witnesses there at the scene, all of the employees, family members will be able to ascertain whether or not what it is, and we work on that.
As I mentioned earlier, we had an off-duty firefighter come into the fire station. We don't know what transpired. That's under investigation by the sheriff's department. What we do know is that that off-duty firefighter shot one firefighter specialist who's a 44-year-old male who passed away. We also know that he shot a 54-year-old male captain who was transported in critical but stable condition to Henry Mayo Hospital. And we also know that that's been linked back to that firefighter's home that came into the fire station. But anything other than that is being investigated by the sheriff's department. Is too premature for me to release.
Do we know how many people have been in a fire station around this time?
It was brought to my attention that in this particular station on this day it varies, but this particular shift today would be 3 people: a captain, a firefighter specialist, and actually four, a captain, a firefighter specialist, and 2 firefighters. And firefighter specialist is an apparatus driver. I don't know that, and that's all under investigation by the sheriff's department.
So not on the investigation, but on the administrative side, do you know that the shooter subject to any type of administrative correction, any type of negative proceedings pending, anything like that?
That I don't know. I'm unable to speak to that, but as mentioned by the sheriffs, any administrative actions or current status of the employees and anything related to today will be investigated and released at an appropriate time.
Daryl, are you aware of any past complaints with HR about bullying or about doing things to each other that we were aware of before today? Anything regarding that?
Like I said, I saw under investigation, and when the investigative report is available, then I'll be able to speak more specifically to those questions. I cannot speak to the mindset of the shooter. I can just say that it's very tragic and sad that that would be a decision point of one of the members of the Los Angeles County Fire Department, and even more tragic that he came back to a fire station where people were on duty working and shot 2 people. I can't speak to the motive. That's all under investigation. When our firefighters arrived on scene of the fire, we coordinate all the time with the sheriff department. They made a determination based on the safety of our personnel to let the fire burn. Once it gets to a condition where they can go do an investigation, then the sheriff's department and our arson unit will do a more thorough investigation. That's undetermined at this time. Once we're able to make entry, then we'll make that determination. No, I don't. I'm sorry, the rank of the off-duty firefighter is also a firefighter specialist and engineer. He was off today, so the personnel that were scheduled to work today were at that fire station, and then for whatever reason, the shooter came back to the fire station, but he was not scheduled to work today. I don't know his work schedule. I just know that he was not scheduled to work today, and he came back and confronted the on-duty personnel. Yes, so what we've done is that we have our peer support personnel and our mental health doctor and other support from the County of Los Angeles making an assessment of our personnel as we stand here today, and I have a meeting after this to speak to more personnel. So we've relieved some personnel already, and what we've done for the surrounding fire stations is we brought move-up companies from the basin to relieve them of their responsibilities to enable us to have peer support briefings and mental health assessments of our personnel. And from the outcome of those briefings, we'll make a further assessment who should and who shouldn't be at work, and when they'll be able physically and emotionally stable enough to work. If you can imagine, they lost one of their coworkers, and as a matter of fact, 2 coworkers, and another one's in serious condition. So that is an ongoing assessment. Unfortunately, I have too much experience with dealing with fallen members of my department. I've been with the department now for over 37 years, over 10 as a past fire chief, and I've spoken at over 70 funerals. None as tragic as today, but each conversation that I have with the family members and our employees and the friends of their loved ones are different. But you can imagine the proximity to today's event is just very numbing. And in some instances, it's just very hard to even articulate words to express our feelings other than to show our condolences and that we'll be supporting the families and friends.
A few minutes ago, you described the victim that got shot and because you knew that person. Did you know the shooter? Can you describe any interaction you might have had with him, or what if he was up to?
The only thing I can tell you about the shooter, once again, he was scheduled not to work today. He came back to the fire station for whatever reason. The incident occurred. The rest of the conversation, the rest of your question, is under investigation right now by the Sheriff's Department. That's still under investigation. As articulated earlier by the Sheriff's Department, there was a victim at the fire, but it wasn't safe for us to go in and identify the body, and if at this point can even be identified, it might be something that the coroner might have to do, but nevertheless, that's being investigated by the Sheriff's Department. My understanding of the victim is that he was a career firefighter. I'm assuming you're talking about the person that died. He had been in our job for approximately 20 years. He promoted to the position of firefighter specialist, which drives the fire truck. Started off, I believe, as an explorer in the forestry department. So obviously this was a career path for him. He's worked at some very busy fire stations, and even working at Agua Dulce. That's not a very busy fire station, but a lot of dynamics there, particularly this time of the year due to wildfires. So it takes a lot of courage to work there. Not everybody has the courage and skill set to do that. So the feedback I got from his family and his friends and co-workers, truly dedicated, one of our better firefighters, amazing, and a true loss to our department. And the only thing that I can ask is that we keep him and his family in our prayers. I don't know that information.
Chief, our deepest condolences. Within the history of the LA County Fire Department, has anything like this happened before?
Not that I'm aware of. In one other situation, a couple of situations, I've had people commit suicide and unfortunately even a murder-suicide, but those were done on private residences or private property. I've never experienced, or nor am I aware of a situation where a firefighter came in off duty into what we call a safe house, our home, and conducted this type of activity and shooting in a firehouse. That's I have no recollection nor knowledge of that. No. No.
Any word on the firearm, type of firearm, the caliber, and on the timeline of when you guys will be able to get that?
I think that would be a question that the law enforcement can answer. Okay.
Yeah, so any specifics on ballistics, we're not going to release at this time. That's something we obviously have to conduct our interviews. So, I mean, these guys all worked on different shifts. I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware of how fire department shifts work. They work 24 hours. So we have to interview all the people that are assigned to this firehouse that worked on all 3 different shifts to basically get into, was there any history between these individuals? When was the last time they saw each other? That's all stuff that we still have to conduct. Obviously, we've only been out here for a couple hours now, and this is going to go on for a while. No. We feel fairly confident that that is our shooter, but we can't say that with 100% certainty. Yes, ma'am. Not to our knowledge, no. Any other questions? Well, again, that speaks to kind of what I just said. We still have to interview those witnesses. They are currently, as we speak now, being interviewed by our Homicide Bureau detectives. So that's something that we will acquire through the interviews.
Good. Okay, that's going to conclude today's press conference. Thank you so much.